I've now pressed the record button. Welcome everybody to the role of the GSL module. We're going to have a quick look at what the role entails. And our first slide, when it moves forward, it's not moving forward. There we go. So the role of the GSL, what's it all about? There we go. To ensure the effective operation of the Scout group in the first part, the next part, and to the development of the Scouting within the group in accordance with the purpose, principles and policies of the Scout Association, which is all a bit of a mouthful really, but we were going to tackle each part of that slightly separately as we move through the presentation tonight. But if you're like me as a GSL, I've got a lot of things going on this week in my group in Scouting. So on Sunday it's our AGM, which we've heavily disguised as a garden party. We've also got work going on at our building, having just successfully had a grant through for £10,000 from the Lotteries Commission, and they're busy digging up the outside of the building and putting a fence around, which sounds really good. However, we have been waiting nearly 10 years for that to happen. So the life of a GSL can be very varied in the sorts of things that we get to do. From the most interesting, which would be perhaps working on a bid to get some money into the group, right through to spot cleaning the tea that the builders have dropped all down the corridor in the building this week, which, you know, it's part of the job, I suppose. I did say we were going to have a little play of going off screen and trying a little polling thing. So the role of the Group Scout Leader, I'd like to ask you to tell me what your favourite task is. I'm going to just skip out of the presentation slightly and bring up another screen. So what tasks do GSLs do? I'm going to open some voting, and if we go back to that slide, it'll give you the how to affect a little polling system we've got going. So I'm going to go back to the current slide. There we go. Current slide. There we are. So if you could go to that website very quickly and enter those that code there, so 123566, we'll see if we can bring up a little polling. Well, in fact, it's a nice little word cloud that will start to appear. I'm just going to reduce the presentation again slightly. So if you've all got that www.govote.at into your browser URL, it will ask you for that code there of 123566. You can achieve this on your smartphone as well these days. We've tried this with colleagues and it works quite well. I'm going to flick back to that screen now and see, and yes, we've got some results coming in. So hopefully you can see that, and as they come in it will slowly grow. So we've got 7 people who've been competent enough to get onto a webinar and yes, use another browser tab, and as you can see we've got quite a few things coming there. So promote the group, negotiate, DBS management, I'm glad someone has put that in, encourage, resolve conflict, that's a nice one to see there as well. There's always something interesting going on in a Scout group. As you see, we've got 13 people who've got through there. I like to see the word motivate in there as well. That's key to making things happen. Fix problems, a nice practical thing there to share. As we say, it's nice to see that the support in the middle seems to be getting more than a couple of votes, so that's quite good. I'll just leave that for a couple of seconds more. It's mainly because it's nice to see it change when somebody votes. There we go. What I'll do later on is I'll copy that into an email which I'll send to Peter, which he will then send round to yourselves. Cleaning, yes, I've been doing some of that recently as well. I'll be making sandwiches on Sunday as well, which should be interesting. 21 folk have managed to do 2 things at once. This is excellent. Okay, I think people get the gist of that. I'll probably nip back to the presentation. That will probably carry on changing as we go through the presentation. And we may come back to it at the end just to see if we've got a few more people who've contributed. So from the current slide, we'll carry on. So there we go. So who puts this person in place? The GSL is appointed and responsible to, I don't think this is a trick question, it's quite easy really, the District Commissioner. I'm guessing we should have a reasonably good relationship with the District Commissioner in the districts that we are. We are in fact part of the district team, which may come as a bit of a surprise to some people, and it might answer why the DC keeps asking you to do things, because you are part of the district team as well. The groups make up the district and the support, so don't be surprised if you're asked to be involved by your DC. But if you keep your DC informed with what's going on at your group and you're very, very busy, then obviously he's not going to ask you. We'll talk about some of the core bits of our role in a minute, and one of those is about what we do and how we manage our time. I'm going to bring up something you probably will be fairly familiar with. Here we have the wheel. This appears in some of the advertising documentation we use for GSL. So if there's any GSLs there thinking, I've done my few years at this job and I'm looking for a successor, you'll be glad to know that there's some really good resource material out there for recruiting GSLs, which is available to you. So some of the core tasks of the GSL would be around this wheel. So providing direction, we'll cover all of these in a little bit more detail in a minute. Definitely working with people, that's probably inside and outside the group, probably at district level and beyond as well. We're expected to achieve results as we go, and actually achieving results is just a measure of a journey and how things are going. You probably, any GSL who's working with a group will achieve results as they go along. We'll talk a little bit more about that and what we mean in a minute. We enabling change. That might be a little bit foreign to some, but we'll come back to that again. We certainly use resources, and this is a rather blanket term. And then we come back to the point I was making earlier about managing your time, and we'll include in there our personal skills as well, because we're not all brilliant at every aspect. I'd expect most people to be fairly competent in some of these core tasks and may need support to work in others, which is fine. You don't need to be absolutely brilliant at all these. What you need to do is recognise where your strengths lie and perhaps be able to bring people in, and I've certainly done this, to cover areas where you may feel that you're a little weaker. So we'll take out the first sector, and there he is. So providing direction. What do we really mean by this? Well, I kind of like this straight back to scouting itself. We have an interesting model in scouting where we work in small groups and we work with young people to promote. And most of our young people really do crave to have some sort of leadership role. They like to provide direction to the small group of people they work with, so be that a lodge or a six or a patrol. And I tend to put the whole thing into those contexts. So a GSL simply provides that form of direction in the scout group. Let's put some words around that then. As we've said just then, you don't have to do it. It's about making it happen. And I'm guessing there's one or two sage GSLs who will be able to say yes and nod quite sagely about that as well. So these are the areas we were looking at really. We need to provide that direction into the group. We're going to be talking about working with people. We'll talk about the plan that we might create to get from A to B, and just because you haven't got a shiny glossy development plan doesn't mean to say that you won't have a plan. I know most GSLs will have a to-do list at least, or a list of things that the DC would like them to go to. Some will probably go a little bit further than that, and we'll have a look at some of the issues and problems that can come up and actually go to creating a plan. And good news is there's plenty of resource out there to help you do that. Certainly enabling change. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a minute. Use resources, which will all add up to, maybe it is, some leadership and management, no matter which way around you put that. But I do think that scouting covers leadership quite strongly. The difference being that I'd expect a leader to be involved and get on with the people. It's not a question of setting people targets and then standing back. I think there's a little bit more hands-on when we talk about leadership in scouting. We need to be prepared to have a go ourselves, and we may find there are better people out there to take things forward, but that's the leadership I'm thinking about. Management was all those tools that we might use elsewhere. Let's move round our wheel then. Well, we won't move round our wheel. Let's see, talk about using my notes properly. What we're going to do is have a look at the 6 key areas of policy that we need to stick to. I did say we would come back to the whole role at the beginning, and it talks about working within the rules of POR. And you're all anticipating what those 6 areas are going to be, but I'm going to bring them up on screen one at a time. Obviously, we've got some responsibility to a child protection and safety first policy within the group. I refer to our GSLs and myself as a gatekeeper, really. We're the ones who are checking out our volunteers with a keen eye and making sure that we're putting the right paperwork in front of them, and certainly introducing them to the yellow card and making sure that our group is as safe as it can be. Our next area of policy, anti-bullying. I've often wondered about this one. I think for groups where they have a bullying issue, they know all about it. The fortunate thing is there are lots of supportive materials available from headquarters if you've got issues within the groups, a group with bullying going on, and there's lots of useful handouts and support around the policy. Some groups have problems with this, other groups don't. If you're in the don't category and you don't recognise it, count yourself lucky. There are some groups who suffer, and they have to use policies, and some of the things the leaders have to understand is how to work with young people around this. Religious policy is still there. We are now open to any religion. We're open to people without religion. If you're not aware of that, you may want to revisit Chapter 2 of POR and just check, but there's been a change in the last couple of years, certainly, that we can admit people into scouting who don't have any particular faith. But we're also open to all faiths as well, which probably leads us neatly onto the next one, which is around equal opportunities. Obviously, we're co-educational, have been for quite a while, and we're trying to reflect the communities that we come from in terms of gender diversity within the groups. We're not quite there yet. The numbers are creeping up, and there are certainly girls enjoying scouting in my group and in our district, and there are a fast sector of growth within the movement at the moment. Can't go much further without mentioning safety. You'll all be aware within your roles of safety within the group, be that around the building itself, if you've got your own building, or about activities that your leaders get up to. You're probably fully aware of the permit schemes that we need for adventurous activities, and how to keep our young people safe out there. I've just slid underneath that the vetting policy as well. Added to our role in the last couple of years has been the use of Compass to get our vetting done. So we should necessarily be familiar with the paperwork and forms that are coming through now. So we can do DBS checking, and we can also do ID checking, and basically making sure that the people we bring into scouting are the right people and vetted in there. And lastly, and this loops right back to that beginning statement again, is a development policy. It is enshrined in our Chapter 2. And I think there's a recognition by scouting as a whole that we're not completely there yet. So scouting does need to grow and change. It's a movement after all. and the development policy is there really so that we get to a point where we do actually reflect the communities that we work with, and Scouting isn't seen as something as a throwback. So the general public aren't coming to us and saying that it's shorts and big hats and it's for boys only. I doubt they're actually saying that these days. There's a lot more stuff going out about what Scouting is all about these days, and I'd love to know what the general feeling is from the public these days after the amount of stuff that goes out and which Scouting is involved in, not least reflecting on the other objectives that are creeping in around 2018, which you may well be aware of. So those are the policy of the association, and perhaps those are the sort of things in the background that we need to bear in mind when we are running a Scout group. We can't run it unless we run it within the rules of the association, and pretty much everything you need to know about running a Scout group is contained in a very dry document of policy, organisation and roles of POR. Most people these days will refer straight back to the website and have the document in some PDF form. Does make it extremely easy to search if it's in a PDF document. In one document you can find things fairly quickly. So those are the policies and our link back to the association and where we come from. What we're going to do now is move on to the structure and the people that we work with. So you probably recognise this slide as it builds, but I'm going to put you as the Group Scout leader at the top, and we're going to talk round some of the people that you would interact with within the group setting. So if you are very lucky, you may have an assistant Group Scout leader, which is nice to have. I've had assistant Group Scout leaders in the past, and they have performed some interesting roles. I had somebody back in 2007 who was dedicated to the centenary and took a lot of the role as it applied to that off me, and produced an awful lot of interesting work to the group, which was very useful. Yes, group active support there. So that was a change a couple of years ago, that groups can now have active support units attached to them. So if you've got people around the group who want to give support, that is an option to have an active support unit, although they do have to have a remit. They can't just sign up. There has to be a reason for being, but we'll save that for a different presentation. The main strand then is our leadership team, and we find a lot of Scout groups that follow this sort of model. They have if you indeed have a Group Scout leader, a lot of groups don't have Group Scout leaders, but they will have leaders who look after sections, and they will have assistants who work with those people. And if you're very lucky, you'll have section assistants, instructors, occasional helpers, and all those other folk who help around, parent helpers indeed, supporting our young people in their sections. If you notice right at the bottom, it's also including the parents. One of the tricks in Scouting is to try and recruit the family, not just the young people. So we make sure that the resource of the parents is definitely something that we take into account. So for some Scout groups, that's where it stops. Obviously for other Scout groups there's a whole different side, and this is perhaps why I split this side out a little bit, because it's all very well if you have got a Scout group which has got these other extras as we move them on, and you've got your executive committee there. A lot of groups will have one or two people in there. I haven't really come across a Scout group where we've got absolutely every last post filled. However, we are moving towards it. My group in particular, we've generally there, but we're always working towards. If you're sitting there thinking, well, I haven't got an executive committee, the next thing you need to be doing if in your sort of plan for your group is perhaps looking at getting that support in place. Now you may remember that I mentioned that there were some areas of my Scouting that I had blind spots for. We went through the process of building a new headquarters. As I say, we're having the fence put around it now some 10 years after we moved into the building, again with a grant, but I can only say that that went ahead because at the time I found somebody to be the group chair who was almost the antithesis opposite to me, in the sense that he was a born salesman, and he could get out and annoy the hell out of people, and he really made a big difference while he was in post of galvanizing a team of adults and getting in the money and the resources to build the building and deal with interesting situations, and just bringing his sales side to bear. That's all he does in, day in, day out, is sell stuff. So he's an interesting bloke, and he certainly complimented me rather than duplicated any skills that I might have. I mean, quite used to talking to people, but he was really good at selling the situation. Beyond those folk in the group, the core three, if you like, the GSL works with the chair, and the secretary and treasurer would look after the administration side of the group in terms of finance and all the other bits of paperwork. You'd like to think, well, I hope they are. Below those, we've got the other parts of the committee, and we will talk about this later when we get to Peter's session. So we've got nominated members, elected members, and co-opted members. If you're not aware of what that means, don't worry, we'll be covering that shortly. So moving on, I did say we were going to talk about working with people. That last slide really gave you all the people on the internal side of a Scout group. So we've got our leadership team, our executive, and all the other folk, but obviously there are a whole lot of other folk out there as well. We'll just bring up what it's got to say here. So we know who the people are because I've just shown you within the Scout group. Well, perhaps need to include all these other people as well. So we're going to engage with parents. Well, for why? Because really that's where all your support comes from. I talked about we engaging with families and not just bringing young people in. If you can bring families into Scouting, then you've always got a ready pair of hands to help out. So we really do need to spend a bit of time thinking how we can engage with our parents. That's an interesting thing, and I've had some interesting approaches in the past that have worked really well. As I said, we have an AGM at the weekend. We've heavily disguised it as a garden party to tune in with the Queen's 90th, and there's a red, white and blue theme. Tickets have sold quite well. I will be making cucumber sandwiches, and we will be having jelly and ice cream. However, they will also be having an AGM in there. There's some silvers to give out, lots of badges, lots of awards for the kids. There's every reason for parents to come down and enjoy being down at the Scout group and seeing us in a slightly different context. So what we mean about engaging with parents is perhaps allowing them to see Scouting in its fullest sense rather than the first and last 5 minutes of any Scout section meeting, which probably will put most adults off. We also need to work in our committee if we've got one. If we haven't got one, we're striving to get one. That's the way it works. So we need to go back to engaging with parents to get those committees working. We're having meetings with leaders, and I've given that a little asterisk because as GSL you have a little bit more to do with leaders. You've got some direct reports. You will have to at some point review what they're doing, and certainly you'll need to keep a handle on where they're up to. You don't want any surprises by someone suddenly saying, I can't do beavers for the next 6 months because I'm moving to America for a project. Well, hopefully you'd have known about that in advance. That's all about keeping communication going within the group and being able to talk to your leaders. I recently had a review with my Cub leader, who sadly has moved on from working in the Cub section. So as GSL, yeah, okay, I am running a section on Wednesday nights, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but I'm bringing people through to take that position on, if only they would take on the leadership role. However, my Cub leader didn't leave the group. She took a step back, and she's now coming on as group chairman, which has been very useful. She's a school secretary, so I guess you can see where I'm going with that. We have to work with districts. The DC will want to develop Scouting and will want to know what's going on in your group. We need to help our Scout group work with other groups in the district as part of the programme for our young people. It's not in isolation. We need to progressively move them through scouting, and one of the things we must do is make sure that they participate with other scout groups, and certainly working with districts and counties and beyond is what people will get. There's no way that a Beaver Scout is going to end up at a World Jamboree unless he's gone to a district camp or a scout camp or some national event before he gets there, probably when he gets to Explorer Scouts. We also need to talk to our local communities, make a noise and make sure they know we're out there and what scouting is all about. There's lots of resources around this. You could go on forever, so we won't do. One of the most shocking things that happened to me about talking to a local community, when they knocked our old building down so they could make way for the new one, the assumption in the village was that our group had closed. So we really had to do some backpedaling and talking to our community at that point, and it just made me realise that I'd probably taken my eye off the ball at that point. So a salutary lesson there when people are going around saying the group had closed when it hadn't. We'd just moved into temporary accommodation while they built a new building. Moving on then, round our circle, achieving results. Yes, we have to do this. So it's about creating a plan and working your way through it. This shouldn't be too strange, really. If anybody's doing AGMs at the moment and filling out a trustee report, perhaps to go to the Charities Commission, one of the things that they've started to ask is what objectives you set out for your group and whether you achieved them or not. And that's the sort of thing they want to see in their report. And I think it's quite right that we should be talking to our groups about what we're going to be doing in the next year, rather than giving them a full report on what they've all been involved in. It's all very nice. I've been to AGMs where we've got a procession of leaders standing up one after another, and you can see the audience switching off in various levels because they were there, they were involved. So when the Beaver leaders tells the group about the sleepover, most of the Beaver parents have taken the opportunity to go and get another drink. Because they're aware that sort of thing can go into a report. Now, the Beaver parents are much more likely to stop in the room if the Beaver leader is announcing that there's something special happening next year for the group. And that's really about the different way of looking at a plan. For the group itself then, what tools are out there? Well, there's all sorts of development planning stuff about finding out where your group is at the moment and how to move it forward. We're not going to cover that particularly deeply within this session, other than to say that part of the role of the GSL is to achieve results. There are lots of detailed information available about your group from district. If you're brave and you found the report buttons in Compass, you'll be able to generate working documents for your group. If you're aware of the census websites, you'll be able to find the last 12 years history of your group and to see what sort of level of change there's been within the group, whether that's an increase or a decrease. If you've just taken on a scout group, you may be interested to know that information is available, so you can check out what the history of the group is and where you might want to take it further forward. It's really nice to achieve results. I certainly know that my young people at the group really like to get their badges, and woe betide me if I forget to order or bring the badges down, because they'll get very upset. True is the same with everybody else as well. If we set out on a plan and we don't achieve, then it's really hard to go back. But what is important is when we do get something right, we do celebrate it, and a bit of a reward for the team that's helped out and moved it forward, and a pat on the back, and tell everybody about it. Make sure everybody is aware. We'll move around our wheel one more time. Enabling change within the group. If we reflect back on perhaps a group that's been the same size for the last 10 years and not moved forward, then maybe what they're doing currently isn't moving things forward. So you may need to change what you're doing. I've got a pithy phrase somewhere in my notes which sort of says, if you want to change some things in your life, you're going to have to change some things in your life. And that's a fairly annoying thing, but same's true of the group really. don't expect your group to change and move in any particular direction if you just carry on doing the same things that you did last year and the year before. One of the shocks that we introduced into our group, because of where our building is, they are building 2,500 new houses. We have an overload of young people that wanted to join the group. We opened a second section, and when we checked around the district for who else had opened a second section recently, we found that there weren't so many. There's a lot now, I have to say, but there didn't seem to be a lot of experience. So that was a bit of a shock to the group and how we were going to go about that. You will be glad to know that there's a lot of support out there, so you can change things in your group. Always do it with a smile on your face. Create a positive feel within the group. Motivate your team. That word came up again and again within the word cloud that we created. So yeah, we need to motivate our people to get involved. And lastly, really, if we're going to put all that effort and work in, expect that you will be successful. It's unfortunate that with our attitudes within this country and the adults particularly, we're never happier than when it's raining, and we can go on negative solidarity, really. Oh, it's raining. Oh, yes, it's raining again. But actually, we're not really very good at celebrating our success, and perhaps we need to make a mark sometimes and say, yeah, well, actually, you know, we've done this. I would then reflect back on our young people. If they've got something and they've achieved something, you know that they're going to enjoy celebrating it. So same is true of our adults within the group as well. Recognise the successes as we go. Another segment of our wheel then, using resources. This one's probably slightly more obvious. Not very pithy, but knowing who to ask and where to get things done. Well, couldn't think of another way of putting that. But we have to manage budgets. We have to work with the executive. We need to maximise a positive impact in our communities. It's all there in 2018 objectives. We need to work with the best information, so we need to go and find the reports and work out what's going on and how to move things forward. And we need to keep everybody in the group informed. In terms of other notes around the use of resources, I think we can make it even more easy than that. This can be people as well as things, and it also can be money, and it can be equipment. You just need to think about it, really, and that really leads us into the next slide, which is around managing our time and our personal skills. As I said right at the beginning, as a GSL, we don't necessarily need to do it ourselves, we just need to make sure it happens. So hopefully we need to do some of this. A lot of people coming into the GSL role now are looking to use it as a method of developing their own personal skill set, because some of the training that's available is very good, and why not? So as a group scout leader, we need to think about our time, use it wisely. Time's something that you don't get it twice. It's not like money, although frankly money at the minute. We need to delegate where we can. We may even want to take some risks sometime in delegation, because if you're thinking of succession planning within your group, you're going to have to give some people a try out. And actually scouting is one of the only places where you can try, fail, and then try again. I think as long as you get up and dust yourself down and try again, nobody's going to be upset. That's the scouting way, really. We need to review our own work and see if we can identify any things that we need to change, and be a little bit critical about what we do and how we do it. Keep yourself up to date. You can't be any more up to date than trying to wade your way through a webinar with two likely characters like ourselves who are trying this for the very first time. I've enjoyed trying to explain the role of the GSL. There is a little bit more information, and of course we're going to refer you back to the role of the GSL in terms of a handout. You may or may not be able to see a handout button on your side. I'm not sure if you can. I was able to upload a handout, so I'm hoping you should be able to download it at your end. Nevertheless, if you can't, we will certainly send it on to you. And perhaps just to finish on something like this, I think if you can be that person, you can make a difference to our young people. That's powerful and well worth thinking about. And certainly on our last slide, I would like to say thank you and enjoy the challenge. It's supposed to be fun. Scouting's supposed to be fun for the adults as well as the children. And with that, and I'm not sure how long I've taken on that, although my little clock says 30 minutes, Peter. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right, yes.
Yeah.
Very comprehensive.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and hand over and change presenter now, which then means I'm going to try and answer any emails that come up. So you will have to change and send emails to peter.hodson@scouts.uk rather than to Peter Thorpe. We'll see. I'm sure Peter will always answer them afterwards anyway. So I'll press my change presenter button and make presenter and say yes. Have you got the presentation there?
Can you see that?
I can see that, yes.
Can everyone see the presentation, hopefully? Okay, we're going to talk about group executive committees. A group executive committee is a very good support for Group Scout leaders. If you've got an effective group executive committee, it will make your life much easier. Okay, I know not everyone's got a fully functioning, effective executive committee yet, but it's something that we want to strive towards and support you to get towards. Okay, so just a couple of things. Executive committee members, all the members of your executive committee are charity trustees, and they are there to support the Group Scout leader with the management of the group. And you'll see from the slide it's similar with district level and county level, but the role of the group executive is there to support the Group Scout leader with the management of the Scout group. The Group Executive Committee has a lot of responsibilities, and we're going to go through them. Okay, the most important thing to remember is the Group Executive Committee act collectively as charity trustees. It doesn't matter what position that you have on the Executive Committee, you all are one voice, and if it comes down to a vote, you need to vote about the issue, but it's not one person dictating what's going to happen. It's about all agreeing, or as I said, coming down to a vote on how you're going to do it. So what does the Executive Committee do? First of all, it needs to comply with the policy, organisation and rules, and that's our rule book. And Peter's already mentioned the 6 key policies that you should be following, but the rest of POR, the Executive Committee have to follow. And you may also have your own constitution to go alongside POR. And if you would like some example copies of constitutions, please let me know, and I can send you some drafts of what other groups have used as a constitution. You're there to protect and maintain your property and equipment. So if you've got your own Scout headquarters, your Executive Committee is responsible for the upkeep of that building and any equipment that you might have. So camping equipment, group trailers, minibuses, etc. So the Group Executive needs to make sure that all the equipment and all the property are fit for purpose. You need to manage the group finances. One of the things the Group Executive should be doing on an annual basis is setting a group budget. The group budget will help you to determine how much membership fees that you need to charge the young people, how much fundraising that you need to do. Do you need to replace tents or other equipment? So the group budget is a great way to work out your financial needs for the year ahead. And the Group Executive is there to make sure that it can support the group to meet that financial responsibility. So for example, if the group wanted to take away the children on a big summer camp next year, is how is the group executive going to help fundraise and support financially that activity? Or if the group wants to buy a minibus, how is the group executive going to help to finance that purchase? So finance is a major part of the group executive discussion. Okay. Insurance, is the group insured? Your membership is insured through your membership fees, but do you have equipment insurance? Do you have occasional helper insurance? So what other insurances do you need? Are you all aware that you can get a copy of the Scout Association's public liability insurance for either £5 or £10 million? So all you need to do is ask the Information Centre and we can send out to you a copy of that certificate if you're doing a public event, and as I say, that covers you for either £5 or £10 million. We also provide resources for the group, so that might be in terms of adults. The group executive is responsible for helping support adult recruitment. It might be financial resource, or it could be a physical resource, like finding a campsite or finding a place to do something. But the executive is there to make sure that the uniformed adults have the resources to deliver the programme. And it's also there to develop local scouting. So within your area, have you got a waiting list? Can you start a second beaver colony or a second scout troop? What do you need to do to develop scouting in that area? Do you have posters up in the area? Do you have banners up? Does the executive have a profile, publicity around your locality? It's also very important that the executive committee is responsible for safety. So is everything done in a safe manner? Is safety on all your executive committee agendas? It should be. Have you reported any accidents to the group exec that's taken place since the last meeting? Do you have an accident book anywhere? So safety should be on every agenda, and it should be a discussion point about any issues that's arisen during in between meetings. As I've already mentioned, you should be promoting a positive image of scouting in your area, so any community impact projects, getting out about the community, working with the local community, local councillors, MPs, local church ministers. It's about promoting that positive local image of scouting and making sure that scouting is alive and well in your area. To give you quite a bad example of myself, until 2 years ago, like Peter, I was a group scout leader, and we met in a church near where I live, and we've met there for 26 years. About 3 years ago, we had a power cut in the church, so we couldn't run Beavers, Cubs or Scouts, so we ended up doing it in the car park of the church. And there's about 6 houses opposite the church, and during the during the firelight we were doing in the car park, a local resident came across to ask what we were doing, and we said, oh, we're a local scout group, there's a power cut, so we're doing scouts outside. And he says, I've lived here 20 years and I never knew there was scouting happened here. I saw people coming and going at 6 o'clock and leaving at 9, but never knew what happened. We've now got a huge sign outside which advertises our group, so it's just that positive promotion of scouting within the area. Does your group executive committee have subcommittees? So you don't need to have subcommittees, but you may, if you have a headquarters committee, you may have a fundraising committee, you may have a development committee, or do you manage all of the business at your executive committees? But you can make use of subcommittees if you so wish to. As Group Scout leaders, yourself and your group chairperson is an ex officio member of all your subcommittees that you have within your group. You can bring people onto subcommittees that aren't trustees and not part of your exec committee. So you can bring specialist people in, depending on what the subcommittee is. Involve young people with the decision making. So have an 18 to 25-year-old person on the executive committee to get their view on what you're doing. Just because you've always done it a certain way, it doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it. So if you were to bring in some different views for the executive people to consider. And the executive committee is also there to appoint administrators and advisors and co-op members onto the group executive committee. So in terms of administrators, if you've got a group administrator and a group secretary, it's the group executive committee's decision to appoint that administrator. If you've got a headquarters warden, for example, it's the group executive's decision to appoint that person. So all that types of administrators, etc., are appointed by the group exec. The group executive also presents the annual report and accounts at the AGM, and as Peter's already mentioned, try not to call it an AGM, call it a family fun night or a badge presentation or something like that. It would be great to try and call it a different name and attract as many people as possible. So some groups are really successful. I was at a group AGM recently, and they had 110 parents there, which was fantastic because they had it during their annual barbecue. Another group did it and called it an AGM and had 3 parents there. So it's about getting the right image of what you're trying to do. As long as you do the important official business, then the rest of the night you can sell it however you want. But the executive has to present the annual report and accounts at the AGM. The executive committee should also maintain appropriate confidentiality. There could be situations where you've had to ask a leader to step down because of issues, or you might have had parental complaints, or there could be financial issues. You could be supporting a family with money towards an activity at camp, and that information needs to be kept confidential. Not many scout groups act as an employer, but if you were to have a cleaner for your headquarters or a paid secretary, then you need to make sure that you act as a responsible employer. But as I say, I'm not aware of many groups employing people. And if you do have staff, you need to agree the line management arrangements for that staff. It would be really interesting to hear if anybody online does actually have any employed staff within their group. Some people can't be a trustee, and they are, if you're banned from being a trustee under the Criminal Justice and Court Services Act 2000, if the person is an undischarged bankrupt, if the person has been convicted of an offence involving dishonesty or deception, or if you're under 18. So they are the categories of where you can't be a trustee. So who is who on a group executive committee? There's 4 main categories. They are the ex officio members, the nominated, elected, and co-opted. And what's really important to remember is these categories are where you end up at the end of the night on the AGM. Okay, it's not where you start at the AGM, it's where you end up. So ex officio is your chairman, secretary, treasurer, group scout leader, assistant group scout leader, sponsoring authority if you have one, and your section leaders if they wish to be on the executive. We'll touch upon that in a second. The nominated members are who are nominated by the group scout leader, and that number is normally between 2 and 6 people. But the key to that is your elected members, and your elected drives how many nominated people you can have. So if you have 2 elected, then you can have 2 nominated. If you have 6 elected, you can have 6 nominated. So the elected is what drives the nominated membership. The elected comes from membership of the Group Scout Council. Membership of the Group Scout Council is huge. It includes all current leaders, uniformed adults within the group. It includes the current executive committee. It includes advisors, any vice presidents of the group. It also includes parents of all the youth members. It also includes all former members who are over 18. So that the list of elected availability is huge. But you need to set with your Group Scout executive what the number is you're going to have for the elected membership. So if you've set that at 2, then there can be an election for 2 people from the Group Scout Council to the Group Executive Committee. You as Group Scout leader can then nominate 2 people, or 4 or 6, depends on the number. And those nominations can be anybody that you like, as long as they're not on the list that can't be on an executive committee. So unless they're under 18, they're banned from being a trustee, they're banned from being a company director, etc. So it could be your next door neighbour, it could be your boss from work, it could be the local MP. It's people that you think could make a difference to your executive committee. And the nominations is your choice as Group Scout leader. And normally you would do that in consultation with the group chair. And then finally, the Group Executive Committee can then co-opt up to the same number of elected people as has been appointed. So if you have 2 elected, the Group Executive could then co-opt up to 2 people. If you were to have 6 elected people and 6 nominated and 6 co-opted and 6 ex officio, that makes your group executive very big, 24 people or thereabouts. So my advice would be to maybe have 2 or 3 elected and then 2 or 3 nominated, and it keeps the executive to a more manageable number, because by the time you take into account your ex officio people and add that to your nominated and elected, it gets a big crowd of people. So I would try and keep the elected to 2 or 3. But you do have the choice to go for between 2 and 6 people as per policy, organisation and rules. So as I've said there, ex officio, so GSL, Assistant Group Scout Leader, Chairman, Secretary, Treasurer. The reason I say it's where you end up at the end of the night is because the Chairman is nominated and the Secretary and Treasurer are elected. So it's a bit confusion. So that's why I always say it's where you end up at the end of the night. Elected members, nominated members, and co-opted. And the group executive will co-opt the any members it wishes. And you would do that if you had a particular project. So if you were building a headquarters, would you bring in a specialist to advise you and help you? If you're looking to fundraise for a minibus, would you bring in someone for that? It depends on what's happening in your group at the time. Your district commissioner and district chairman have right of attendance at group exec committees, and they should get minutes of your meetings, and they should get the agendas and notification of the next meeting. Not many district commissioners and district chairmen attend on a regular basis unless there's an issue or you need them to attend, because if you've got a number of groups in the district, there's not enough time for the DC and the district chairman to get round to every group executive all the time. So that's the makeup of a group executive committee. A district executive committee is very similar with nominations from by the DC, and elected comes from members of the District Scout Council, which all members of groups are part of that. Okay. Just to refresh your memories, in 2011 we changed the rules about section leaders being ex officio members of the Group Executive Committee. So the Beaver Scout leader, Cub Scout leader and Scout leader now have to declare their intention to being a member of the Group Executive Committee. The reason for this is before 2011 the Beaver Scout leader, Cub Scout leader and Scout leader were automatically a member of the Group Exec. During the time of the financial hardship, a number of people were going bankrupt, and it meant that a person couldn't be the Cub Scout leader because they were bankrupt. They could become an assistant Cub Scout leader, but they couldn't become the Cub Scout leader. So we changed the rules in 2011 to give people the opportunity to be on the executive committee as a trustee, as a section leader or not. But at the group AGM, the section leader should declare that they are a member of the Executive Committee or not. There is a form available which we can send you. It is on the national website. It's not the clearest website in the world, we appreciate, but we can send you details of that form to be used at group AGMs. If you have a subcommittee, make sure that it's got clear responsibilities, a clear purpose. Make sure it's formed by the Group Executive Committee. I do apologise for keep saying District Executive Committee. That's because I am a district chairman myself. Very importantly, the members of a subcommittee don't have to be trustees. Okay, they are not trustees of the group. The Scout Association's got a number of training sessions for executive committees, and I think there's 6 of them in total, sorry 5. So there's an introductory session, effective committees, finance for all executive committees, the officer role, and the recruitment and induction of executive committee members. What I would ask you to do is to contact your local county training managers. These sessions have been devised by headquarters, and we've trained a number of people in each county across England to deliver this training session, and the county training managers will have the details about who's trained in your relevant county. So unfortunately I don't know who's been trained in each of the 17 counties across the north of England, but if you contact your county training manager, they will be able to advise you about who is on this training, and it can be delivered locally, but it's well worth doing. If I can also just add to this, as of January the 1st this year, Executive Committee training has changed for Module 1A, and that's now a requirement for all Executive Committee members at group, district and counties to undertake Module 1A and also be validated by someone within 5 months of your AGM. So this is a new rule that came out in January this year. So just to recap, within 5 months of your group AGM, all your Executive Committee members need to complete Module 1A and be validated. And this is really important because we were finding a lot of group Executive Committee members didn't appreciate, didn't realise, hadn't been told that they're trustees of their group. And it's really important that we've spent a lot of time training uniform people, and we've kind of left to one side trustees and exec committees. So we've now got this training package to support our executive committees. If you want any help or any information on that, please don't hesitate to contact me and I'll point you in the right direction. But this new training came out in January this year, and it's Module 1A for trustees. But coming back to the voluntary training sessions on the screen in front of you, I would encourage you to speak to your county training manager and try and get them organised within your districts, within your county. They can be delivered as modules, or they can be delivered as a full day session. Depends on your CTM. I did have any questions on there, but I appreciate we've got a text box not working on the screen. If you do have any questions on executive committees, please don't hesitate to contact Peter or myself, and we'll be only too happy to help. There is information on executive committees in the GSL Essentials guide that was sent out to you yesterday, but any further questions we'll be more than happy to help with. And as I said at the start of the session, a good effective executive committee is a real support for you as a Group Scout leader, and it can be really, really useful for you to have. That concludes the 2 sessions for tonight. We do hope you've enjoyed it. Have you got anything to add, Peter?
I was just going to show that screen, if possible. There we go. That was all the voting that came in. I would also like to add my thanks to everybody for participating this evening. We will love some feedback. we're probably going to ask for some formal feedback as we go along with the other sessions, and don't forget there are another 2 to come up, so we're very glad to see you at those. We will keep you informed as we go along. Anything else, Peter?
No, just if you've got any feedback, good, bad or indifferent about a night, please email Peter and myself. As we said at the start, this is a trial, and we look forward to seeing you all on the 7th of July.
Very good. We appreciate that we look very, very similar, so if you want to vote for who looks the smartest tonight, that's entirely up to you. But with that, I think we'll probably stop recording the session for a start.